it's not plain and simple, is it? There's that many different religions.
Do you think you'd be interested to look into Islam one day? Assalamu Alaikum and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well, inshallah. Today we're here again with my mum.
Hello, hi.
Today we're going to be reacting to, while writing anti-Islam book He Became Muslim, the story of Joram van Klaveren. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I have seen his story before and I thought it'd be really interesting to let Mum have a little watch and hear her thoughts about it. So let's begin, inshallah.
How and why did you decide to write an anti-Islamic book? How was your life in regards to faith? What did you believe in? What was your heaviest and most regretful expression that you used for Islam? And what was the reaction of the people around you when you became Muslim?
I thought to myself, Islam is a lie. Islam is a danger. I got over 2,000 death threats. And in the end, I decided to write an anti-Islam book. God, give me a sign so that I 100% sure know this is the way. I couldn't sleep for it for 2 days. I couldn't accept it. It was so strange.
Assalamu Alaikum, Brother Joram van Klaveren. Thank you for accepting our invitation and we are happy to have you with us. I want to first ask you, who is Joram?
Alaikum salam, Ahmed. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor for me to be here. Joram van Klaveren was born on January 23 in 1979 in Amsterdam in a pretty regular family, father, mother, brother, another brother, younger, sister, a cat. In Amsterdam, I was born and raised there. We're a practicing Protestant family. After I finished high school, I studied comparative religion. I was a teacher for a few years. There happened a lot of things in the Netherlands, especially in my life. Also, when I look at the bigger picture when it came to Islam, I became politically active for the Freedom Party. I became a member of parliament. And in the end, I decided to write an anti-Islam book, which started as an anti-Islam book, changed into this search for God, and it ended up me becoming a Muslim.
How was your life in regards to faith? What did you believe in?
Before I was a Muslim, I was a Protestant Christian from the Reformed Church. We read from the Bible, we all got biblical names, we were all baptized, we went to church, etc., etc. So we're pretty Christian in that way, in that sense. Of course, I believe that there is a creator. I believed in heaven, hell. I believed in angels, revelations. And of course, what separates the Christians from the Muslims is that I believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God. Yeah, in a more philosophical way, I believed he was God himself, of course. I believed in the resurrection and crucifixion of Christ, of course. And I believed in the atonement. But because the Trinity is a very complex concept, whether you believe it or not, it's still very complex. Because if there is a God in the Bible, it says God is eternal. But if you are eternal and you die, you cannot be eternal, immortal at the same time. So that was something when I was a little older, 16, 17, I started questioning things like that. It's not very logical. I talked to many priests, preachers, even rabbis, and the answers I got weren't very satisfying. That made it for me kind of complex, and in the end I had some doubts about stuff like this, but I said, well, I set it aside and I thought, okay, I just believe it, and perhaps I'm not smart enough to get the whole picture. And I still believed in God. I still believed that Jesus was a very important person. I believed he was the Son of God, but how it exactly was, I left it for what it was.
I get what he's saying there as well, because growing up in our schools and stuff in the UK, we're all kind of towards Christianity, and I never understood that Jesus was the Son of God either, but yet he died on the cross. And how could God die? In Christianity, it's the Trinity, where there's God, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost. I never felt like anybody gave me a clear answer. Everybody just kind of gave you what their own opinion on it was, and nobody gave you a clear answer. And I just kind of lost interest in it because it didn't make sense to me. I've always believed there was some sort of God, but I couldn't get my head around it.
I know. I remember you used to go to Sunday school and you really enjoyed it, didn't you? And then all of a sudden you didn't like it, did you?
I liked it when I was young with the other children we would play. But then when we had to stay in the church and sing hymns and stuff and we weren't allowed to play anymore, it's when I kind of stopped.
It was too heavy for you, wasn't it, at the time? And
how do you feel though? Like, do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God?
My mum was religious and brought up in a convent. We wasn't brought up as a practicing family, and we didn't go to, didn't go to church as a family. Never did. I don't have a strong faith, do I? I mean, I try my best to be a nice person, but that's because of the nature I am. It's not plain and simple, is it? There's that many different religions, and you hear different things that I wouldn't really like to say, because I don't have a strong thought about it. If I had to say, I'd say I was a Christian, because I feel I practice good deeds, and but that's it really. In desperate times, I've asked God. So I suppose I haven't I really? So I've asked him for help, and I feel like he has helped me. So I think on those occasions I do think he has helped me, made the right decisions. So I do. So therefore I do believe in God. So my mum was Catholic and brought up in a convent, as you know. She got married, and then she went back to the nuns to show them her husband, which was my dad. And they wasn't really happy with that. They said, in the eyes of the Lord, you're not married, so you have to go through, I don't know what they call it, but they do so many weeks on the faith. I don't think he got baptised, but I don't know, because I don't know about my dad, because he won't talk about religion. As you know, he doesn't want to talk about religion. So I don't know, but I think he followed the faith for about 10 weeks, and then he was invited to get married in church. So that's what they did.
I can't see maybe why he wouldn't have been allowed to marry Nanny without taking on the faith, because in Islam anyway, a Muslim woman cannot marry any man that's not Muslim. It has to be a Muslim man. And the reasoning behind that is so that she's going to be treated correctly.
Yes, I can.
So that
I can see that.
Yeah, because you know how highly respected women are in Islam. So it can only be a Muslim man. Whereas for a man, he can marry anybody from the Abrahamic faith. So a Muslim man can marry a Jewish person, a Christian person, or Muslim, but nobody with no faith.
Yes.
And you can't go to other faiths like Hinduism and things like that. You can't marry someone from one of them religions, just Abrahamic faith.
How and why did you decide to write an anti-Islamic book?
After high school, I went to university and I did comparative religion. And the remarkable thing, I think, was that the first day of me going to college was September 11, 2001. Already thought, okay, these Muslim guys are kind of crazy and this religion isn't the truth. Then a few years later was this guy in the Netherlands called Theo van Gogh. He was a famous filmmaker and he was killed in the street. He was shot and they tried to slit his throat and they put a knife in his stomach with a letter on it for another girl, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. And it said, "You are next." So it strengthened my anti-Islam feelings in such a way that I thought, well, I have to become politically active to do something and stop this evil of harming our country.
You started politics because of Islam?
Yeah, and that really had to do with Islam. That was the reason that I wanted to write a book, to explain to people why Islam was a danger for the world. When I was writing my book, like I said earlier, the questions, the doubts I had about Christianity popped up again. And that was about truth, of course, because I was a believing Christian guy. And yeah, the Christian questions I had in the end were answered in an Islamic way. Because, of course, when I started writing the book, a lot of people think that it was a political book. But it wasn't so much a political book, it was a religious book, because I wanted to show people why Islam was a danger as a religion, and I wrote it from a Christian perspective. So in the beginning I made a comparison between the Christian concept of God and the Islamic concept. So I started comparing it. But because I had these doubts about the Trinity and I saw Tawheed, the oneness of God in Islam, I thought, yeah, it sounds a little bit more logical. And then I thought to myself, well, I reread the Bible to refresh myself, to see, okay, why isn't the concept of Islam, the Tawheed concept, isn't the Christian concept? But when I was reading the Old Testament and I saw what the Old Testament prophet said, it was one God, one God, one God. And then I thought, okay, I'll look only at the words of Jesus Christ in the New Testament. And then there's this story in the New Testament where a guy comes to Jesus and he asks him, what is the most important thing in life? How can I gain paradise? And he said there are two things. He says, "Hear, O Israel, hear your God is one. Treat your neighbor as you want to be treated yourself." So I thought, well, even Jesus Christ says, "Hear, O Israel, your God is one." So I thought, well, this whole Muslim concept of God sounds more logical, and it's the same concept that I find in the Old and the New Testament. And I know Christianity as a religion teaches something else, but it isn't the concept of God that I find in the Bible. So after weeks and weeks of study, reading, rereading all kinds of books, I thought to myself, okay, perhaps this oneness of God is something that is true. So that's how it started.
It is interesting actually, because a lot of scholars in Islam, they have studied all religions. So you can say anything to them about Christianity, Judaism, anything, and they could give you an answer. And I've seen a lot of scholars talking about how in the Bible it said that Jesus, peace be upon him, prayed as a Muslim, his head on the ground, you know, exactly as a Muslim. And yet Christians don't pray in that way, and they do this cross thing, but Jesus never did that himself. So that's just something that they've picked up in the churches. It's not even in their book. Right, it's just something that's come over the time. There's other things as well in the Bible that they shouldn't eat pork because it's a forbidden animal to eat, like it is in Islam and Judaism. Alcohol, I think you can drink in moderation, but you should never be drunk. And I would have thought modesty and things like that as well.
Over the time, I think the trouble is, isn't it, that things start, the borders start wearing out, don't they? Do you know what I mean? So people, so to be honest, if somebody thinks that you can drink alcohol but don't get drunk, that's always going to be hard to maintain that right level, isn't it? It surprises me that, to be honest.
Like you've said before, in Islam it's black and white, yes, no, you know, haram, halal, there's no question about it. Alcohol, not one sip, you know. And I think it's better to be yes, no, rather than you can have a little bit of that, and then where do you stop? How much is a little bit? How far does that go?
I know.
What resources did you use while doing your research?
Because I was kind of shocked, I started writing to several authorities on these religious matters. And one of the guys that I wrote to was Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad, and he's a professor from Cambridge University. But in a way it was kind of strange, of course, because I was a politician back then still. I was writing an anti-Islam book with an anti-Islam purpose. And I'm asking this Muslim professor from another country, can you help me? So I told him, I'm writing a book. I have a lot of questions. So I was very plain why I thought, why is Islam promoting terrorism? Why is anti-woman? Why is anti-Christian? Anti-whatever. After, I think, 6 weeks, he sent me a very extensive email. And he started explaining, directly answered a lot of my questions. But he also told me, you have to read this article, read this book, read that book, ask this person. And so he was very extensive in his way of explaining. But in the end, after I read all these books and articles and made a comparison between prophets from the Old Testament with Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, I had no arguments anymore to say they are prophets and he is not. And I thought to myself, well, if I accept Moses on these grounds and I cannot accept the prophet, then there is something else. So I thought, why don't I think he is a prophet? And I thought, oh, perhaps because he had many wives. But then again, when you look at Solomon or you look at King David, Abraham, there are a lot of people in the Old Testament that had more wives. And when you look at even outside of the religious books, culturally in Europe, in Africa, Asia, everywhere, there were men with several wives for several reasons. So I thought to myself, well, that cannot be a reason either. So one by one, all these reasons fell. And then in the end, I thought, well, I have to say all of them are not prophets. But I didn't believe that, because I thought, well, the things they did, they said, the miracles that happened, etc., they were confirmed in what they said and what they did. So they are. And then I said, well, then I have to accept that Prophet Muhammad perhaps is a prophet too. So I was doubting it. So first I thought, well, it's the most evil person I know because of the history. Then I said, well, perhaps it's not that evil, but he's not a prophet. And in the end I started doubting, perhaps he is a prophet. Yeah, that took, of course, me reading a lot of books again. And the one thing that I think was very wise of Abdul Hakim Murad to say was, he said, well, the books you read about with the anti-Islam arguments are written by non-Muslims. He said, if you want to know more about Christianity, you don't read books books from atheists. You start reading the books from the Christians. Why do they believe this? What are the arguments? So that you have to do the same with Islam. So start reading Islamic books from Islamic teachers, from Islamic scholars, etc. And then you can see, if you compare the books on the same topic of people who are Muslim and wrote those books and non-Muslim, you can see where they took the wrong turn, where they translated words in the wrong way, sometimes perhaps even not on purpose, but just because they didn't know, where things are added, where things left out of it. So, and in the end, you see there's this other religion almost created because of all these things. And that's what I did. And that's what I also did with The Life of the Prophet, because I read a book from Martin Links, The Life of the Prophet, based on the earliest source of Muhammad. And it was written, of course, by a convert. And his way of reasoning, his way of telling, his way of writing appealed to me because it's culturally the same thing. How do I approach a certain topic, etc. And it was the first time that I saw him not so much as a warlord, because that's the picture I had in my mind, but I saw him as a father, and I saw him as a friend and a teacher, and so much more. And so, yeah, I saw the person and his character, and I said, well, I can say a lot, but I cannot say that this is not a good man. So his character persuaded me to read more and to want to know more.
What surprised you the most while doing your research?
The story about Hind, there was something that, like a switch, like I had to change. And that was because I thought Hind was the wife of one of the enemies, Abu Sufyan. And in a way, they gave money to kill Hamza, the favorite uncle of the Prophet. And that was what happened on the battlefield. He got killed. They even paraded with his ears and cut off his nose and horrible stuff. So the Prophet was deeply sad, of course, of what happened. And years later, he became powerful. He came in power in Mecca. And then there was Hind. And I was reading this book and I thought, okay, now she gets crucified or her head gets cut off or something like that. But he said, well, I cannot look at her right now, but everybody is forgiven. And if you want to stay here and live among the Muslims, it's possible. If you don't want that, you can go. But bloodshedding is over now. And I thought to myself that she was forgiven. If you can forgive someone who kills a relative, especially a favorite uncle of you, even starts parading with parts of his body to show other people that she humiliates you and whatever you stand for, that means you have such a great character. It's very special. It's something you don't see. And that's what he did. So I thought to myself, well, it was a really special guy. And when I thought that, I thought, yeah, well, I have these arguments for him being a prophet. I see his character. I see the way he treated other people. I see how he treated his enemies. I think he is a prophet. But then I thought to myself, whoa, that's horrible, because I already accepted this oneness of God. And now I say he is a prophet. If I say there is only one God and Muhammad is his prophet, that's almost shahada. So I thought to myself, okay, let's close the books. Stop. This is going in the wrong direction. And of course, I wasn't that anti-Islam anymore because of what I read, what I saw, and what I experienced. What I tell you now, it sounds a little like a fairy tale, but it really happened. In the end, there were all these books at the table. And when I had this feeling of, yeah, okay, this is shahada in a way, I thought, well, I put all the books away and I put the books on the highest shelf. But there were so many books that a lot of books fell off the shelf. And one of the books that fell off the shelf was the Quran. And when I picked it up, my hand was on a page with Surah 22, Ayat 46. And it says, it's not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts. And I thought to myself, that really is my problem, because it wasn't the eyes. I really could see what I'd written down myself. Nobody forced me to write this book. Nobody said you have to write this or that. I started writing myself, and I could see it with my own eyes, but I still couldn't accept the fact that I said he is a prophet, there is this one God. I just couldn't. So it wasn't my eyes that were blind, but it was really my heart. I couldn't accept it. I think my nafs or whatever, my ego, I couldn't accept it. And I said, well, God, I don't care if it's the God from the Bible or the Quran, give me a sign or something so that I 100% sure know this is the way. And I went to bed, but when I woke up, I felt very secure in myself. I really felt very secure. I've never been more secure about anything else. The whole anxiety or the whole doubting issue disappeared like snow for the sun. And I thought to myself, well, I think I'm a Muslim. Well, and then, of course, I had to tell other people.
To be a Muslim, all you need to believe is that there's one God and that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the final messenger. And that makes you Muslim. That's all you need to believe in. And then the next step would be taking your declaration of faith in front of 2 witnesses, and then that's it, you're Muslim. And it's really interesting because a lot of people feel like they know so much about Islam, but it's just hateful things that they've heard, whether that's in the media or from wherever it is they've heard it from, and a lot of it isn't true. and yet people have such an awful opinion on it, but they don't actually know what Islam is. And it's interesting to hear that man there was the same, and then when he looks into it for himself, he can't believe where this is heading.
I know, because he was trying to fight it, wasn't he? And he was getting his head turned, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think it's a lovely story, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And he's very joyous about it, isn't he? He's enthusiastic and
I think to have like a full 360 there, where he's gone from absolutely hating Islam, trying to prove that it's some sort of terrorist organisation, to now really falling in love with the religion. That's really special, I think.
Me personally, I've never, honestly, I've ever feared Muslims. I've never feared your faith or nothing. There's good and bad in everybody, isn't there?
Yeah.
And some of these disasters that's happened in the world.
These people though that are committing these hideous crimes in the name of Islam, they're not Muslim.
No.
And as it says in the Quran, if you kill one innocent person, it's as if you've killed all of mankind.
Yeah.
It's, you know, the most horrendous sin that you could commit. And these people are not Muslim that do this. But they do it in the name of Islam, which is a shame.
There'll be Christians that are performing bad acts.
Yeah.
And this is the way it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
But it's
mean,
the small-minded people though that just tar us all with the same brush because they hear of that one incident.
What was the reaction of the people around you when you became Muslim?
Most of them were very negative, of course. For a lot of people, especially some uncles and aunts, it was kind of a shock. They heard it when it was on the news. I told my mother, and my mother started crying. And my wife was pretty open. Yeah, she was very cool about it. She said, well, if Islam is what you really believe and that's in your heart, who am I? And yeah, some people from my old work were really aggressive. I got over 2,000 death threats from people who used to support me, of course. People who voted for me. People said the most horrible things. We will rape your wife, shoot you, you know, where your children go to school, stuff like that. And most of them, of course, is nonsense because they're crazy people writing things on their computer. So it was kind of a hectic time. And I had to tell my work, of course, and it was this Christian organization. So to say that the leader of the pack, he said, I can't believe it. And he said, well, I noticed this change when you talked about certain topics on radio. You were kind of a little more mild, not so harsh anymore, but you becoming a Muslim. And after I said, yeah, I became Muslim, he said, I couldn't sleep for it for 2 days. I couldn't accept it. It was so strange. But the hardest part for me was telling my grandfather, because my grandfather was dying and he was 93, 94 years old and he was on his deathbed at home. I had to tell him, and my mother told me, yeah, you have to tell your grandfather. It was her father. So I said, well, then you have to come with me. It's like a shield. And I just said, well, grandfather, I became a Muslim. And then he closed his eyes. And I thought he stopped breathing because, yeah, he was so old. And he really stopped breathing for a while. And then he started breathing again. And he looked at me and he said, well, at least you didn't become a Catholic. So it was very funny. The last thing, and my old boss from the radio, he said, well, how do we know that you're not becoming Hindu one day or something else? And I told him, well, I never chose a religion one time. And it was when I became a Muslim. Before that, I didn't choose my religion. I was born in a Christian family. I was raised in a Christian way. And I'm very grateful for all the good things that it brought me. But it was not my decision. And the only time I made a decision was me becoming a Muslim. And it was the most, like I said, I think the most important decision I made. And it was the most rational decision I made. I never took years and years to decide one thing, only becoming a Muslim.
How did you feel when you made your first salah?
Salah means prayer in Arabic.
Oh, right, okay.
It's, of course, a beautiful moment, but very strange as well. Because as a Christian, you're not used to pray like that. You pray with your hands together and perhaps on your knees in front of your bed or something. But I think it's very beautiful that you really prostrate. So you really bow down in the deepest way for your Lord. So that's a very humbling, beautiful thing, I think. And that, yeah, it made me feel very happy.
What were the 3 biggest challenges you faced when you converted to Islam?
Well, becoming a Muslim, of course, was a big challenge because I had to tell the world and family, and that was a big challenge. The part of thinking that it would be very hard to become a Muslim because, especially as a Protestant Christian, there aren't so many things you have to do in a religious sense. As a Muslim, in terms of practice, so it is required to pray 5 times a day. It's required to eat in a certain way. It is required to think in a certain way. You have to be the best in a way every moment because of your relation with your Creator and because of the fact that you have to pray 5 times a day. It's a constant reminder in a way of the Creator. So that makes you much more aware of the fact that you have a Lord than as a Christian. That's how I experience it. And I thought to myself, whoa, 5 times a day praying, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, I have to do. So that made it hard in the head. But after I became Muslim, it wasn't hard at all.
I think the prayer in Islam is really special as well, but I can only really talk from Christianity because that's the only other kind of religious background I've had. And we would go and pray once every Sunday, and then anytime you kind of wanted or needed anything, you would just pray as and when. But when you have set times 5 times a day, it really gives you structure to your day. I feel like it keeps you grounded as well when things are going on in your life and you think, oh, you know, it's terrible, why is this happening to me or whatever. Because you are praying 5 times a day, it just keeps you grounded. There's a lot more past this life, basically.
I know, definitely, and it's structured, isn't it? And maybe other people from other faiths might forget for a few days and then, you know, feel bad because they haven't. So it's much better to have that structure. But you've always really shined to that kind of thing. You've always needed something to guide you, haven't you? So and I think that's why it's so really good for you. I felt sorry for him when he's having to tell his family, you know, and some of the apart from the funny reaction he got, which was lovely because that could have,
because he was worried about
him
telling
so
him
much of his dad when his grandpa would die. But I think that it is silly how people for a second even try to judge anybody for changing their faith or whatever, because it's so never feel, you wouldn't feel bad about it anyway because you've not done it lightly anyway, have you? You've done it with all.
Well, I think for him, because he was obviously in the public eye with his politics and everything, so he obviously wanted to get it out to his family as soon as he could. And it's really sad that he got over 200 death threats from strangers, isn't it? It's really sad that they would judge you by your religion. And these people that are sending these death threats, and anybody that has anything bad to say about their religion clearly hasn't looked into it properly for themselves.
It's not for them to judge. That's the thing. It's not for them to judge. Okay, when it's your family members, maybe you feel it's harder to tell them because because it's your family. But I mean, hopefully, the night you told me, did I flinch at all?
No, I think you weren't really shocked about it.
No.
I think though it's nice that his wife was absolutely okay with it and says, if that's what you want to do, then you know, I support you.
It makes me a wee bit annoyed at folk that would judge, but they haven't got the right to. You know, what makes them think they've got the right to? It's crazy.
It is.
I think if you've got a religion and you're passionate about it, it's lovely. And you must feel at peace a lot more than folk that haven't got a religion.
Definitely.
Are you raising your kids as Muslims?
Well, you try, of course. I don't know, when you're really raised as a Muslim, I think it's a very difficult job, especially in these times. Of course, when I married, I wasn't a Muslim. You promise in a way that you raise your children as Christians. So after I became Muslim, I'm not raising my children as Christians, of course. If the kids have questions about Christianity, they ask my wife, they get Christian answers. And if they come to me, they get Islamic answers. But most of the time, she says, ask your father. And my wife cooks halal for everybody, so that's very sweet. She says, well, I'm not going to cook 5 meals, so everybody eats the same. You want halal, everybody eats halal. So in a way, it's like an organic process.
I think his relationship with his wife sounds so lovely, and she's so respectful. She's already Christian, so she could have been funny about him wanting to change his faith. I think it's interesting as well that when their children have any questions, they can go to her, but she mostly says, go to your father and see what he says.
Yes, I know. It's good, isn't it? So it's like an open book for them, for her family, for her children, isn't it? She's not shown disappointment about them being brought up Muslim. Her father is given her the chance to say to answer the way she would answer, and I think it's lovely. Yeah, yes, I think it is lovely, isn't it? It's been open-minded and a loving family, aren't they? So,
yeah. And I also agree where he says it's quite difficult to raise young Muslims now in this day and age, because you know what it's like in this day and age. It's absolutely craziness going on, even in the schools.
I feel fortunate that those days have passed now, because in my family, you're all adults, so it must be hard, mustn't it?
Especially trying to raise a child as a Muslim, you know, keep them away from all the haram things. When it's so accessible to youngsters now, you know, you'll see children with such a young age vaping, and you wonder how they even manage to get it, and they can buy it online. Like, this is the day and age that we're living in.
I know, it's terrible,
It is. It's really, I think it would be difficult to bring up children in this day and age.
What was your heaviest and most regretful expression that you used for Islam?
I think Islam is a lie, because that's something I used to say. Islam is a lie, the Quran is poison. But when I said Islam is a lie, that's the whole religion and everything that comes with it. So that's like the highest level of jahiliyyah in a way. Yeah, that's something I regret, because it was like an umbrella and everything else was under this concept of Islam is a lie, because that was the core thought. And of course I do blame myself, and I know there are a lot of people out there not practicing Muslims that do so. And in a way I understand it, because in a political sense and in a social, cultural sense, everything is said and done is still there. I sometimes even hear arguments from people in my old party that I offended in a way. Yeah, that's something that bothers me, and that's one of the reasons that we founded an organization. It's called the IXC, Islam Experience Center, and we go to schools, primary school, high school, college, universities, but also to departments of the government, other social organizations, churches, to take away misconceptions about Islam, to share the message, to show Islam in its true colors. And we do it by virtual reality with the glasses, so it's a very fun experience as well. And we try to erase in a way the things I said and done in the past.
How should people research about Islam? Do you advise just searching at Google?
No, I would certainly not advise Google. It's the last thing I would advise. I said shut down the computer. No, I think it's very important that people read books, real books with pages and stuff. I would recommend Muhammad, His Life Based on the Earliest Sources of Martin Link's, the book I talked about earlier. It's a green book. And I think it's very important for people not just dive into the Quran, because it's a very complex book. And if you don't have anybody who can teach you what you read, especially most of the people who don't know anything about Islam are not fluent Arabic, classic Arabic speaking people. So you will read an interpretation of the Quran or a translation, and most of the time that's not the real deal, of course. So I would advise people just to study the Sirat, study the character and the life of the Prophet, because that's what the tradition teaches us as well. His life was the Quran. He was the living Quran in a way. Just study his Sunnah, and I think that is the best way of discovering Islam.
What would you like to say as your final comments?
I became much more happy after I became Muslim. So I would like to invite everybody to become Muslim, just because it brings peace to your soul and peace to your heart. It is the truth. It resonates with heart and soul. At least look at it from an Islamic perspective. Try to read and study the life of the Prophet. Try to understand what the Muslims believe. Not so much the behavior of Muslims, because there are a lot of Muslims that don't live like Muslims, including myself. I don't always live like a Muslim. I should, we all do, but you should look at the example of all examples, and it was the Prophet. And if you study his life, perhaps you find guidance that leads you to the truth.
I never thought of asking this, and I know the answer anyway, but are you happier now you've become Muslim?
Yeah, much happier. I found peace and meaning in my life. I don't let things bother me as much as I did before. I mean, of course, I'll still get bothered and I'll maybe like lose a little bit of my direction, but it doesn't take long. And I just think that there's such a bigger picture, and this life is so short, and it's just a test.
I know you
really
are
means
a
nothing.
lot calmer, I can see that.
I found his story actually a wee bit emotional there towards the end.
I know.
To see somebody who had so much hate built up in them to then...
Well, he was writing all that because he wanted to actually condemn them, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And help people or encourage people to be against it, you know?
Yeah.
But he was an honest man, because he could see that he was losing a battle, wasn't he?
Do you think you'd be interested to look into Islam one day?
this moment in time, I wouldn't do.
Why would you say that?
Because you know what I'm like. I am what I am. I'm as happy with the way I am, to be honest. And I think I'm a kind person. At this moment in time, I wouldn't think I would.
I think you kind of think like, oh, I'm a good person, and I think that's enough for God, and that I don't really have to believe or really look into anything. But the way that we think about it is God doesn't need us. God created this entire world, He created all us human beings, all animals, everything. And why would He need us?
I know.
So we pray to Him to be thankful for everything that He's done, and yeah, just to worship Him, our Creator. But He doesn't need us. If I decided tomorrow that I wasn't going to be a practicing Muslim anymore, He doesn't need me.
I know.
Like the funny Aussie convert story, I enjoyed that one as well, and I really enjoyed this one as well. And I just think it was so interesting, his story, going from feeling so hateful towards the religion to then falling in love with it. And in the beginning he didn't want to accept it, but then he did in the end. So I think his story is really lovely, and I think that his wife sounds really lovely to be such a good support to him. And now he's already started his own organisation, he said, where he's promoting Islam, trying to cancel out the things that he said about it before.
That's really lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
And his family are getting the opportunity to see both sides as well. And no, it's lovely.
Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, give me a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video, inshallah.
Thank you. Bye.